Reason why I say that, you already know, because some people watch the replays and whatever it is, I wish you all the best for you guys. So glad to see that chat is here. I'm so sorry for the last minute time change. Before one of you ask, uh, two things went wrong last night. First thing, I had a plumbing issue that I needed to get fixed. And while I am handy, and thankfully I know enough, my dad's sort of a architect and contractor at the same time. So we grew up in a really handy household. The scope of work is a little more expert than the handyman. So we had to address that. Second off, since I'll be away later this week, my I want to make sure that my parents get to see my kids before we go away for the week. So we had to shuffle some things around, and Grandpa is only available at 10. So family first, guys. Right there, you go. Let's respond to that one. We say good evening because we have Richard in Japan. Love it. Okay. So I'm going to start off with a commentary, something that I was thinking about throughout the week, which is a common theme, and we can talk about that, and then like I said earlier in the week, I want you guys to wow, Nancy, make sure you ask me this later on because I have what to say being a Brooklynite. So I'm going to go on with a thematic approach on the headlines for this week, and then my general take on it. Before I get going, does anything say Sunday like a T-shirt, like just a white T-shirt at home, right? Okay. This week we had three main headlines: the Greenland purchase, insider trading, GLP-1s, and more. I alluded to something in my main streams this week where I sought out alternative perspectives as to what's happening in places like Iran, where supporters of the regime say that they're being invaded by terrorists, by foreign actors. Meanwhile, as we know, it's just another Tiananmen Square episode. It's just another demonstration of the people's will. The twisting, the mental acrobatics that are done by these dictatorships is something that we know as a liberal, free thinking, and exposed society to a lot of different ideas. Most of us, if not, I would even say all of us, especially watching right now, are highly educated, familiar with the works of Aristotle, Nietzsche, de Tocqueville. I mean, it's not exactly a worldwide thing to know these things. We went through a headline this week where 45% of respondents to a Gallup poll identified as independent, especially with the younger they got. I pointed to the fact that the because people are saying because the younger people are increasingly saying that they are more independent does not necessarily mean that is so, and does not necessarily mean that they're critical thinkers, that they're nuanced, that they're courageous enough, and it's a shame I have to use that word, to say what they really believe. All it means is they just don't believe in one or the other party. What does it say about the system in general? I could tell you as a 96er, I think we have a lot more education to do. A lot more education to do in teaching the young that it doesn't always have to be an act of hostility between both sides. It doesn't always have to be America is bad because certain luxuries are unaffordable. It has to be, well, this is the place where your efforts, your voice, and your energy can change things. In most of the world out there, that opportunity doesn't exist. We were known as the land of opportunity for a reason. I think we still are. As a first generation American, I'm living proof of it. So, my worry when it comes to the 45% identifying as independent, the increased amount of younger folk identifying as such, what I worry about is they're just saying they don't believe in America. The idea that America represents, the American experiment, right? Like I said, I grew up very politically conscious very early. I was just into it always from a very young age. So I remember a time where I watched President Bush and his State of the Unions, and there was a certain element of cordial behavior in Congress. There was no Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, AOC, Ilhan Omar to act as polarizing and extreme as they do. Our viewing each other as American is the theme that I'm hitting on here. When you're 45% independent, are you 45% to yourself? Or are you 45%, let's seek common ground and agreement with the other remaining 55%? I hope it's the latter, and I fear it's the former. Something I'm sure I'll get into with the Q&A later on. I was raised to earn for myself. I was privileged to never worry about my security, be it social, financial, nutritional, housing. And I was blessed and privileged with a loving father and a loving mother. I was blessed with a privileged private and religious school education. I was blessed with secular education. And I was privileged enough to go to college and achieve my undergrad degree while holding down 2 full-time jobs. I was privileged to turn down the opportunity to pursue graduate degrees, a legal degree. And I worked my tail off, and I am working my tail off in my current entrepreneurial venture. All of that to say, the American dream is still alive, and it is what you make of it. The only way it keeps going is if people keep on believing, trying, achieving, and working at the American experiment. So, going back to this week's headlines, we have the honor and privilege of being in a country where medicine evolves that can change our lives in incredible ways. GLP-1s, participation in fitness clubs, these are not these are the definition of first world topics. What a luxury to have that as a segment and worry or even area of concern. Second, we're in a privileged country of thinking, well, do we just go buy or invade a country? Because guess what? Our head of state wants it. Again, not like any other country can do that. Third, do we intervene in Iran, a sworn enemy of our country? Because if we intervene, we have such clear superiority and the world knows it. Fourth, again about Iran. People are dying for the exposure that I had earlier this week in seeing what the pro regime and the anti regime hold. That very diversity is what most of the rest of the world does not have the privilege of doing. I went out and sought that different opinion. I went out and I evaluated it. Even more so, I went out and broadcasted it to you guys. What a country. And to my opinion, it's ours to save and ours to work at, especially given the Gallup's trend of increasing independent voters towards the younger age. There's my take. Without that, we have time for Q&A about anything. Doesn't have to be about that. So feel free to fire away. I'll get started at the comments, and for anybody who wants to join by video, I will put in a video link. Just be mindful you'll be joining the stream. So that is what'll be going on here. And again, I thank all of you for being on this Sunday morning, especially given that time change here. So let's scroll up to the beginning here. Without that, I mean, you guys can you guys believe it snowed yesterday and today in Brooklyn? My God. Okay. Without further ado. And looking for questions. All right, Nancy. Why do you think more people are voting for socialists, especially in cities? First off, cities are more left leaning. And I think that cities are more prone to outsiders coming there. So let me actually extend the amount of period that this stays on the stream. Okay, so yeah, I'll keep that on for as long as I'm answering the question. Cities are more prone to outsiders moving in. I mean, I see it all the time throughout the 5 boroughs of New York. People from all over the country come and want to be that city kind of person, not have a car, walk everywhere, take the subway, frequent a certain coffee shop, go to a certain fitness club, and really fit a, a mold of the city girl or the city guy. Live in a 100 square foot apartment where you have to sort of sleep on a shelf, and there are some crazy kind of things out there that's rent controlled, and so on and so on and so on. Being that people never grew up, that the people I'm describing didn't grow up in the cities, they don't realize what it comes with, the resources that a big city has. And with the vast resources a big city has, it costs. It costs money to go from downtown Brooklyn to uptown Manhattan. And it costs time, which means you're working less because of travel time. All of that to say, the biggest theme right now is affordability. That's why Mamdani got to where he got to. And what I think and based on the polling data, most out of city New Yorkers, people who were not born here, voted for him. And that's what put him over the top. That combined with my age Brooklynites put him in the position that he's in. What he tapped into, you have to really work to earn your place in New York. You don't deserve a place in New York. You earn a place in New York. You earn a place wherever you are, in New York, New Jersey, Zimbabwe, or China. You earn it. It's a result of your own responsibility. Because Mamdani tapped into that message of, I'm going to deliver a city for you because you deserve it. and you're entitled to it just because you exist is appealing to both the out of cityer or the out of stater who likes the idea of being a part of New York City. And he also tapped into people my age and younger who say, you know what? I'm not making it like my parents are right now, or I'm not like making it like that person who's 10 or 15 or 20 years older than me is. I'm struggling to make ends meet while living in this city. So why don't I vote for this guy who's just going to give it to me easily and give it to me for free? Hell, why don't I, why doesn't he charge that the people who could afford it so I can live their life just for existing, not for working? That's what I think it is. I think it's simply a function of politicians tapping into the idea of I want the result without the effort. It's a human emotion to feel that way, but it's an un-American way to think that it'll actually work. That isn't to say that there's vast inequality. The life I live in New York City is nothing like the life Scott Galloway lives in New York City. Is nothing like what some friends of mine who are really well off live in New York City. Is nothing like the minimum wage worker in New York City. There are worlds of a difference between every class. And sometimes there's despair of ever leaving that class, either upgrading or fear of downgrading. That's my long-winded answer. And to answer your question, I absolutely did not vote for Mamdani. There are some serious anti-Semitic concerns that I have with that guy. But he is our mayor. I wish him the best. And above all, I wish him to address the concern. I don't seek to villainize. I seek him to address the concern. Desert Sun, Arctic Fox. I'm glad I'm doing it too. There's no better feeling than to hit go live and see the community we have going on with this. And I'm not the only one taking note. Do you remember last week I told you about Open to Debate having a new CEO? Open to Debate has a few frequent or infrequent debates in New York City. I attend them, and I'm known at them. That's it's pretty cool. I get to walk in because they don't need to ask me for ID. They already know my name and my face, so it's pretty cool. The new CEO, Leah, reached out to me last night asking me to get on a call. I wonder for what, but I'll definitely keep you guys in the loop. Totally agreed. Snow in January. What's surprising about that? Let me tell you what's surprising about that. Last week, there was a 50+ degree day, and I was not wearing a jacket. It was so warm. And then we're hit with snow, and not a little bit either. Yesterday and today, wild swings. This weather is wildly swinging one way or another. I am not going into a climate change kind of thing, but wildly swinging. Bob, oh Bob. I think there's more going on here because Trump is in favor of this deal. The reason why I say there's more going on is because Trump is only in favor of things that favor either him or America. With Trump being in favor of it, he's either pulling the emotional strings on China's end, on Canada's end, or both ends, probably to get a kickback on American tariffs or deals on that end of the negotiation. Secondly, with Canada going into business with China the way they are, while the whole Liberation Day was unraveling, Canada functioned as a key medium to circumvent those tariffs. Because of Canada and Mexico being geographically where they are, the accessibility of manipulating the tariff system by storing goods there and then dripping it into the United States in tariff optimized fashion became so common to do. And it's perfectly legal. Why not? But by Canada doing that, I believe Trump is playing a hand. Priority, we have a live question coming in. Ham, how you doing? Welcome on the stream. Welcome, Hamilton. What's up?
Can you hear me?
We can.
So I understand that Nancy lived an experience that formed and shaped her life, but I disagree with both of you about what motivates mayors in cities large and small.
Go ahead.
I think that they respond to the needs and concerns of the people who live there, and that often their own political views get subordinated to what they have to do to serve the constituents. They may come from a certain political viewpoint or stance, but their actual stewardship is shaped by the circumstances around them. I was born in Syracuse, which is a small to medium-sized city. I've had the opportunity to live and work in 18 to 20 cities around the nation. They're all different. They weren't all located in the Northeast. They were scattered across the U.S. And I think you're using way too broad a brush when you think that they're necessarily socialist, which I disagree with. I would agree with that many tend to be liberal, left-leaning, but even that's not true. If I listed all the cities that were involved, a third were in the East Coast, a third were in the West Coast, a third were in the center of the nation. And that's just during my experience working in a financial institution. I've also lived, like Nancy, or visited a number of countries overseas. I think it's up to almost 45 now. So I'm not going to draw that broad brush.
Well, so the brush, I didn't mean to paint a picture of that's why they're all being socialist. That's why I think there's a general left-leaning trend. Now, that trend going past the typical democratic or the liberal pain into socialist pain, I think is a symptom of our time. Because of the polarization and the extremities we're being forced to. I also think another force making that okay or allowable, or why we're heading in that direction, is the cleansing of our society's thoughts, especially around communism and the Cold War.
Well,
Socialism,
you're saying that
go
it's
ahead.
also generational. And to test your theory,
Sure.
we should expect that major cities in the Northwest, the Chicago area, other so-called left-leaning will all move farther left in the next coming generation elections. I don't know that that's going to happen.
I'd give it a shot. That's what I believe. I mean, think of Bernie Sanders' support among the younger generation. It's unmatched. The second he reintroduced socialism or democratic socialism in 2016.
But again, you guys are doing it from your experience, or drawing these conclusions from your learned experience where you grew up and to where you are today. Sure. I'm looking back over a much longer arc of time. Sure. I'll give you an example that completely is diametric to what you're saying, and that's Syracuse, New York, where I'm sitting right now. The current and outgoing mayor came from a very strong Republican background. His father was a U.S. congressman for 20 years. Before that, he was mayor of the city of Syracuse. His grandfather was mayor of the city of Syracuse. He was identified as a young man as a Republican. When he ran for mayor of Syracuse, the current mayor that is, He ran as an independent. He did not accept any support from either party, and he won overwhelmingly as a young man because he used independent views. He is your prototypical center of the road, independent. That's where you started from. And he's been highly successful. Now, this is a Democratic city area. It's like New York
No
City.
doubt about it.
Most of the upstate cities are very strong Democrat,
Yeah.
2-to-1, 3-to-1 voter ratios, but we're surrounded by a very strong Republican
Yes.
county,
Yes.
rural areas up in the Adirondacks where I spend most of my time. I live in Stephanic's 22 county district.
Yeah.
22 counties. Can you imagine that? It's the largest district in the United States.
Now imagine now this is all coming into play with the gubernatorial election this year.
Absolutely it is.
Yeah.
And she's got a very strong unfavorable ratio even among her constituents in her district for failing to take any real active leadership while she was elected. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in the governor's race. Right. I can talk about that if you want to. You know the statistics as well as I do. She's got unfavorables of depending on who the candidate is. And I don't know anything about this guy that's now the Republican candidate coming out of Long Island.
Nassau County Executive. What can I say?
Yeah, except for what I read. But that's not the point. Our mayor here, was highly successful running on his own base, on his own issues, and then ran an administration highly successful with people from both parties. And if I were to use that as my learned experience, I would say that's where the future is going to take us. But I'm not saying that that's where other cities are going to go.
So let's
make of it if you if you will. Go ahead.
Yeah. So let's see. So in response, let's say Nancy put into her comment here that her parents couldn't afford New York City. I'm looking for it to put it on the screen. There we go.
Yeah, that's good because when we're in this chat mode, we have no access to what the.
So here it is. I put it on the screen. My parents moved out of New York City because of unaffordability and moved to the Jersey Shore. Newsflash, a lot of people, especially in my community of Southern Brooklyn, did the same thing, especially with COVID. They picked up and got out.
Well, Charles.
Do I think it's a bad thing? I don't.
Charles, that was also true in the 50s and 60s when white flight drove a number of middle-class people out of cities and created these centers of poverty. If you want to talk about city dynamics right now, it's a question of how to return areas of cities that have concentrated poverty back to becoming economically viable. Well, that's a whole separate discussion.
I would take it in a slightly different direction. I would take it in a direction of, is somebody entitled to live in a certain region because just by virtue of existing? I would say no.
Well, I'm not even sure what you're trying to say there.
Meaning the approach that I think Mamdani is taking and is clicking with voters is you are entitled to live in New York City just because you are geographically here. What I'm saying is you have market forces who control whether you can or cannot afford to live in a certain region. So the fact that Nancy's parents had to move out is just a simple function of the free market functioning.
Well, of course, economics comes into play, but the real question is, do you want to live in that area? Why do you want to live in an area? And is it advantageous for you? You live on Avenue Y, 500. I've looked it up on Google Maps only because I was curious.
Okay,
I have
that's
no
cool.
idea where that is in location to where your business is located, but I suspect it's convenient to go from your home to where you live. It would be far less convenient to drive across the Bronx to get to where your business is located. And you certainly wouldn't commute, as I did for a number of years, from Syracuse to New York City because I wanted to live in upstate.
Fun fact, I actually commuted upwards north of the Bronx from Brooklyn. It was an hour and 10 minutes door to door. And just over the past couple of years, we opened up another place in Brooklyn. It's about a half hour away. But we have two locations. One is there, one is there.
But and you probably would not have driven as I did for 5 years from Syracuse to Buffalo and back.
That's a different level of commitment.
So it's more than economics. It's about where you want to be.
That too.
And we select where we want to live to an extent, if we can afford it. If we can't afford it, we live wherever we can afford to live.
That's it. And I think the message of affordability within a city, and we'll make buses free, and we're going to increase the tax on the rich, and the all of the rhetoric that he was tapping into was, if you even go back to his inauguration speech, was about, we're going to make sure that you can live here despite the economics, despite the market reality that sometimes you just cannot do it. That's what I think. That's where I think he's trending against where the American experiment should be heading. Should be a lot more free market than that.
I just finished watching one of my favorite movies on Indie Flicks. Across the River and Into the Woods. It's a Hemingway story.
All right.
Movie starring Lib Schreiber. It just ended. And I highly recommend it to anybody who's listening. I think it's going to be repeated, but I don't know what the networks are that it's going to be on. Have to say that I'm only here this morning because our priest is sick. And
I was surprised to see you. I thought you had church.
Yeah, we do.
We
have Bible study at 9 and service at 10, and our priest is sick, and 90% of the congregation came down with a combination of flu or cough.
Wow.
Last weekend, while we were having a joint service at another church, and they didn't warn us in advance that everyone in the church was sick, with the exception of 6 choir members and 3 people who were not part of the choir.
Okay.
And we went there for this joint service, and we all caught their bug.
Wow.
And so now we're all down. This is actually our second week where we haven't had a service at our church. So that was 3 weeks ago. And so this morning I'm sitting here waiting for a Zoom connection for the service at 10 o'clock.
All righty. All right. Best of health to the congregation.
Yeah. Okay.
All righty.
I'm going to tap out of here in a second, but
sure.
You got anything else you want to talk about other than cities?
Thoughts on the younger generations claiming to be independent, better or worse for the American experiment?
I think it's better, and I'm drawing that from my own son's experience. He was born in 1995, so he literally falls between 2 generations. He's not really representative of either one.
Exactly.
But he's got characteristics of both.
Sure.
I've had long discussions with Dave Casson about this. I wish he were on so that we could do this in person. His kids are facing, the prospect of not being able to live the American dream the way he and his wife do. But my son is probably the exception to the norm in that He has a good job at Harvard Medical. He's got huge future prospects. He's well educated with a twin PhD in biomedical engineering and neuromedical science. He's going to do just fine. I don't worry about him at all.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the norm for a lot of kids coming out of college. He's got his own private apartment in Boston, which is one of the most expensive cities in the nation. Talk about cities. Yeah. It's even more expensive than New York City, which I find really surprising. Yep. And by the way, Charles, when I worked in New York, I also lived on Long Island. So I lived at different times in North Babylon, Huntington, and East Hampton.
Nice.
But he'll do just fine. He's global. He's international. He does presentations at medical conferences in Europe and across the U.S. No, he's the exception to the norm.
I'm sure. And we got a comment saying that I'm sure he's very average, Hamilton.
He's an average kind of kid. That's the funny part of it, but he's very goal-oriented and he works hard. He knows what he wants. He started when he was 12 years old. This is a great story, and I've told it before. He started at 12 years old by coming to us and saying, I want to be a biomedical engineer, but I don't know where to go to school. And so my wife and I both looked at each other and said, what is a biomedical engineer? You know, we had to fire up the box and find out exactly what that meant, and then research where the top schools in the nation are. And in doing so, as an aside, found out we have more biomedical engineering programs in New York State than any other state in the nation. There are 9 top universities listed that are from New York. But the biomed center of the nation is actually in Boston. It's their Silicon Valley. Number 1 school is probably Johns Hopkins, but there's good schools in Texas and Georgia and California.
After all that,
So having done this research at age 12, we said to him, okay, what do you want to do to prepare yourself? And so he went across the street at the time. We had a neighbor who was a biology researcher at Syracuse University. And he knocked on the door and he said, can I come to your lab on weekends and watch what you're doing and learn how you do research? And the neighbor immediately called us back and said, what's going on? We didn't have a clue. And so when we figured out what was going on, we agreed it was okay. He took a lunch. He would go in. We figured he'd be there for an hour or two. You know, the neighbor, actually, the first time my wife took him, but neighbor took him. We're about 1.5 miles off the SU campus here in the city. And he stayed there for 6 to 8 hours. And he went every weekend. And he watched and he learned. And it's kind of silly to say this, but he learned how to mount slides in a microscope.
Right.
And that was important because the next summer he decided to go on a Honeywell research project sponsored by our Museum of Science and Technology. And they had to mount slides. And they immediately said, has anybody ever done this? And he raised his hand and said, yeah, I know how to do this. And it turns out that there are different mechanisms and methods for doing slides on a microscope. Who knew? So he did that for a summer. And then at age 14, he said, I want to be a volunteer at the hospital. Long story short, he ended up in the, what's the office? Where they send all the samples after surgery for evaluation. Okay. He was doing slides on dissections and sections. And the first day he was there, they sent down, well, they tried to test him because he was 14, see whether he should be there at all. And they said, do you know how to mount a slide? And he said, yeah. And so they had him shave some skin cells off his arm and mount it on a slide. And it turns out that they used the same technique that he was using. Now, why is this important? His research today takes hundreds of thousands of samples.
Mark, so we got to bring it home.
Okay. Takes hundreds of thousands of samples, puts them on a single slide that a computer looks through a computer. He's designed the microscope lenses that are used. The computer records all the data, and he gets 1 million pieces of data out of a single slide. It's a progression.
And there we go. Okay.
He uses microfluidics to watch how individual neurons move through a neural network in real time. That's what he did his PhD on, and that's what he's using at Harvard today.
Wow. Wow.
And he designed the technology.
Okay. Listen, you know what he did? You know what he wanted from 12? I'll take it. I'll take it.
That's why I don't worry about him, Charles. I'm sorry to be long-winded.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Anyways, we just hit the 9:41 mark. So Ham, I'll see you tomorrow. The rest of the crew.
Hope so.
I'll see you tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. I'll see you there. Have a great day.
Hope
Have a great
so.
weekend, everybody.